Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Imran Tabrizi. I work in emergency medicine. I work in the A&E department. And before I say anything else, I would like to first of all thank Zahid and his wife, Nolly, for inviting me all the way from London to come here. And thanks for putting on such an excellent show. Has everybody enjoyed it so far? Yeah. Excellent stuff, brilliant. Okay, so basically what happened was I have been doing medicine, working in the emergency department for the last 12 years. And myself and a friend of mine, Dr. Mark Tan, who can't be with us today, we both worked in emergency medicine and we both share the same common viewpoint about medicine. And the viewpoint we have is that one of the things that we were frustrated with the fact that a lot of patients would come into the emergency department and they would be on a whole host of medications. They would be on an anti-blood pressure pill. They would be on an anti-cholesterol pill. They'd be on an anti-diabetic pill. They'd be on a proton pump inhibitor. They'd be on a headache pill. The list goes on. Is there anybody, just a show of hands, of anybody who knows people or who are taking that many medications? A show of hands. Okay, so there's quite a few. Well, no, it's not that much actually. I would have expected a lot more. But in the Western world, it's very common. And it's something which is very prevalent in the emergency department. We get a lot of people with chronic illness. So myself and Mark Tan feel that we're losing the battle against chronic medicine. Acute medicine, I think there is, we work in the emergency department, so we deal with that. But chronic medicine, I think we're losing the battle, and I think it's something that needs to change. So what myself and Mark Tan decided to do is we both decided to embark on a course in naturopathy and nutrition. And last year, actually two weeks ago, I actually just graduated. So I'm actually, thank you very much, thank you. So I've actually seen both sides. I've seen the allopathic side, and I've seen the other side, which is nutritional side, and it's becoming more and more prevalent as time goes on. People are beginning to realize that nutrition is one of the key issues to trying to live a healthy life. So nowadays what happens is that you have people now who are recognizing that. And one of the developments that has happened recently is there is something called functional medicine. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. But functional medicine is something which is growing. There is, in the United States, in Washington State, there is the Institute of Functional Medicine. And last month, I attended one of the very first international forums. And our next international forum is going to be in April. So I'd urge you to go on YouTube and type in Functional Medicine International Forum. And I think it's something which, as you get involved with Kangen water, it's going to be something that you're going to want to know more about. You see? And the reason why I say that is because how I got into Kangen water was through Mark. And through discovering Kangen water, it has taught me a huge amount about water that I never knew. And I think most of the people in this room who've experienced Kangen water also will be surprised at this great gift that Allah has given us, which is the water. And I think most of the people in this room are very privileged, in fact, to know or to be in touch with Kangen water. Most of you have seen the lectures or the demos about all the places where they have this miracle water. You've heard about Lourdes in France. You've heard about Lake Titicaca in Peru. We have Zamzam water. All of these waters claim to have miraculous effects, and we now know with science what it is, or some of the attributes of what Kangen water has. Now, Coming back to what I said about functional medicine is something which is slowly being picked up. It's something which is only a handful of doctors actually recognize it. And it's hoped that this community will start to grow. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. So it's a community which is slowly growing, and as time goes on, people are going to start to realize that a lot of the things that we eat and drink is what determines how we can become more healthy. And it's a very good way of looking at things. One of the sayings we have is, فَبِأَيِّ اللَّهِ رَبِّكُمَا تَكَذِبَانِ. Which of the favors of your Lord do you deny? Allah has created your body. He's created all the things that you could possibly have in the world that grows, which you have access to. Zamzam water being one of them, and alhamdulillah, Kangen water is now with us. We have that. We have that. Vegetables and fruits. Vegetables and fruits is something which grows. Allah has provided that for you, but yet we deny. Not only do we also deny, we've complicated things even more by actually poisoning them. Now, the reason for that is because of supply and demand. When you start to introduce ecology, economy, and politics and all of those things, people want to make profit, people want to make a large amount, it suffers from those things. So vegetables and fruits now have a lot of pesticides in, insecticides in, but alhamdulillah, we now have a way of removing that. We have Kangen water 11.5. We can put that inside. We can wash vegetables and fruits. What does Kangen mean? Back to origin. So you can see the beauty of the water. Kangen means back to origin. So what it's doing, it's taking your vegetables and fruits back to origin, back to the way it was intended to be taken. Fresh, without pesticides, free of all of those kind of things which would poison your inside body. So this is such a powerful thing, and we should be privileged to have this. So what I endeavor to do next is to try and take you through a journey to understand what it is. We heard a lecturer earlier on talk about know your product. That's what I want to try and impart with to you guys. Having a deep understanding of what it is you really have, and how powerful it is. Now, before we say that, the other thing I'd like to mention is that there is a lot of conflict in the scientific community. And as people promoting Kangen water, you're going to come across situations where people are going to ask you questions like, why aren't there any studies to back up why Kangen water is so great? Is that a question that you've had to come across? So what do you say to them? Exactly, what do you say to them? Well, the thing is, what you have to understand is that medicine itself has also suffered the same fate as vegetables and fruits. It's been muddied, the waters have been muddied by politics, it's been muddied by capitalism to a certain extent, and what happens is, and also law. And these are the things that have taken medicine to a different level. In all my lectures, I always say, who is the father of medicine? Who is the father of medicine? Hippocrates? Not Socrates, no, Hippocrates. Socrates was the guy who did the 90-degree angle thing. Yeah. Hippocrates. Now, Hippocrates used to say, let thy food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be thy food. Now, I would have to say that the compass heading in medicine has changed direction drastically. We don't follow that rule anymore. We rely on medications, we rely on surgery. Now, I'm not saying that these things are bad, but what I'm saying is that moderation is the key. And we have to embrace this knowledge about taking responsibility for ourselves, drinking the right water, which you now have, the best, and eating the right food in the right consistency and pesticide-free. So, where is the conflict in this medicine? The conflict comes when it talk about research. Research is something which medicine depends on in order to justify why you go in a certain direction. For instance, we rely on something called evidence-based medicine. Now, what is evidence-based medicine? Evidence-based medicine is where you have a situation where you put something through a trial. So, for example, we have a room full of people, you have a medication, you split the room up in half, you give half the people this medication and half the people a control. And you compare to see whether that medication has had the desired effect. And if it does, with the majority of people, they will pass it and say, yeah, this medication, we endorse this, this is it, this is what we're going to start using. And that, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, has been the way in which illnesses have been treated or have been dealt with. So, a pill for an ill. So you have, for example, metformin, which is the drug for diabetes. You have proton pump inhibitor lansoprazole with people who have acid reflux. And this is the way in which we follow. And nobody would argue with that. Nobody would say that that's wrong because it's evidence-based. We've seen it work. But the problem here is that everybody's different. Every human being is biochemically different. And you're going to learn more and more about that. You're going to see a lot of these new products coming out. For example, something called 23. Has anybody heard of 23andMe? Yeah, so these are all genetic testing kits, which you can take home, send off to a laboratory, and they will send you back a biochemical pathway or a biochemical system to show how you fare or how your body does things like oxidizes, if you're a fast oxidizer or you're a slow oxidizer, how your body is different from everybody else's. And that is something which is new. That is where medicine's going. And this is why nutrition fits in with that. Because now what we can do is we can look at the biochemical pathways and try to supplement. So for example, if you're deficient in a certain nutrient, you can then harness that nutrient. But then it depends on where the source of that nutrient comes from. Because now you have the problem with supplements. You have different types. You have supplements which do nothing. You have supplements which have been tried and tested. And that's why you need to go and see a nutritional therapist, because they usually will know which supplements are tried and tested and which ones work. So that's another sort of way of looking at how the body is and how we need to go down that pathway. Now, the other thing to mention is the next conflict, which is when it comes to talking about Kangen water itself. Now, does anybody know how to deal with conflict? So in Islam, how do we deal with conflict? So there is a surah in the Quran that says, let me get this right. It says, Khul. Let me get it. I better take it out because I'm going to keep forgetting it. I always keep forgetting. Let me get it right. Let me say this properly. All right. It's probably because I'm a bit nervous. That's why I keep forgetting. Yeah. Right. I don't want to say it wrong. Okay. So it's Khul ya ahlal kitabi. That means say, O people of the scriptures, Ta'alaw illa kalamati sawa'im baynana wa baynakum a'la na'budu illallah. That means come to words which are equitable or equitable between you and I, so that we may go forth and pray to no one except Allah. Essentially, what that is trying to tell us is that we need to come to common terms between you and I in order for us to move forward. How do you come to common terms in a situation where people are relying on evidence-based medicine and trying to ask you about Kangen water? How do you deal with that? So the title of this lecture originally was The Science of Kangen Water. But I wasn't happy with that. I wanted something a bit more, I wanted to define it. And that's why we called it molecular hydration of Kangen water and its application at the cellular level. Why did I choose those words? Because that is how I wish to come to common terms. How do you come to common terms? You have to take things down to the cellular and molecular level. Because people can't argue with that. It's been tried and tested. People know about atoms, protons, electrons, neutrons. At least that's what you guys are going to learn. So I apologize to all of those unreservedly if this is something you find boring. But I think it's important because we have to go with what our lecturer said earlier. You have to know your product inside out. And these are questions that people are going to want to know. We've heard some testimonials, some very heartfelt testimonials about somebody who had SLE. We've heard some other testimonials about people who have cancer. We've heard some other testimonials about people with diabetes. But the question is, why is it that Kangen water is helping these people? Now, as a medical doctor, I am not at liberty to make any statements about what this Kangen water can do. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to make any, some wild, miraculous things that Kangen water does. But what I can do is I can explain at the cellular and molecular level how it is that these testimonials are actually happening. Why is it that these people are actually benefiting from Kangen water? And that's what I hope to try and achieve today. Because once you understand what it is that Kangen water is and how it works at the cellular level, you will be able to answer some of those questions. Okay? So, what we're going to do first of all is we'll go right into it. So, apologies again. What is water? What is a chemical symbol for water? H2O. So we have H2O. Now, is water H2O, really? Is it just water? Is it just H2O? Is that water? Is that what water is? No. So water is a medium which contains a lot of other elements. We have sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Somebody's going to put up a periodic table at some point. But anyway, all of those are in the water. Okay? Now, but let's, for simplicity, we'll just deal with this, H2O. Now, H2O can actually go to H plus OH minus. So this is what is called a dissociation. So water usually looks like this. You have the oxygen and you have your two hydrogens. Some of you probably have already seen this by some other prominent lecturers on YouTube, including myself. Anyway, so you have H2O, which goes to H plus OH minus. And that is called a dissociation, and it goes back the other way. That's why the arrow is written in both ways. Now, what we need to understand is we need to understand the difference between this, and this. This is half the battle. A lot of people don't seem to get this right. And I've seen people make mistakes on YouTube when they talk about this stuff. So this is why I want to make sure that after you leave this lecture, you all understand what it is we're dealing with. And you can tell all your friends. So, right, okay, periodic table, right. So in the top left-hand corner, you have the very first atom, or the very first element, which is hydrogen. Yes? H has an atomic number of 1. Now, every atom contains what three things? Or most atoms. Neutrons, protons, electrons, right. How many neutrons does hydrogen have? You sure? Final answer? Hydrogen contains 0 neutrons. Yeah, that's a trick question, you fell for it. Right, so it has 0 neutrons, okay? How many protons? 1 proton. And how many electrons? I'm talking about hydrogen, yeah? 1 electron. Now the reason why hydrogen, this is hydrogen atom, this is what we're talking about here, hydrogen. Hydrogen has 1 proton, 1 electron, and therefore the proton is the positive charge, the electron is the negative charge. The positive and the negative cancel each other out, so hydrogen atom has a charge of what? 0. 0 charge. There's no charge on hydrogen atom because the electron and the proton cancel each other out. Right? That's that one there, the one that says 1.0079. So that's your hydrogen atom. Yes? So what then is this creature here? What is H plus? Is that an electron, or is that a proton, or is it a hydrogen atom? Which one? It's a proton, right. And that's why, because it has a positive charge. So that's this. This here, hydrogen with a plus, is actually a proton. It has lost its electron. Because the electron is the thing that is on the outside. It's the cloud. The electron has been dropped, and all that's left is a proton. Now, that, ladies and gentlemen, the proton, is what determines what about the liquid? It determines the pH. Well, it determines the acidity of a liquid. So what it means is if you have a lot of these, what is it called? Acid or alkaline? It's an acid. So acid is if you have loads of these. If you don't have many of these, what is it? It's an alkali. Exactly, so that's the difference. Now, so that is the basic premise. This one, H2, is a hydrogen what? It's a hydrogen gas, yeah, but what is it also called? What's the title of this topic? Molecular hydration. It's molecular hydrogen. That's what H2 is, molecular hydrogen. And why is it a molecule? Because it's two atoms. Two atoms make a molecule. So that's what this is, which is a gas, as you rightly said. Now, molecular hydrogen is the magic ingredient in Kangen water. Yeah? That is the secret weapon in Kangen water, H2. Now, I can just pack up and go now. That's it. Job done. Right? But that is it. That's the secret ingredient, H2. Now, the next thing we need to do is, what are the three properties of Kangen water? Alkalinization, antioxidation, and microcluster, right. So we're going to deal with each of those in kind. And the reason why I want to deal with those each in kind is because it's important you understand what those things are. So the first thing we're going to deal with is alkalinization or alkalization, whichever way you want to look at it, alkalization, right? And this is determined by something called the pH. Now, what is pH? What is pH? Say again? So pH is called potential hydrogen. Well, actually, that's actually a misnomer for two reasons. P is potential. Let's call it potential. P is actually a mathematical term. This P actually means negative logarithmic concentration of. Yeah? Follow me so far? No, you're not. Now, you're all looking at that and thinking, what the hell is he talking about? Negative logarithmic constant, what? Basically, what it is that, right, what it is, this H here, first of all, this misnomer, this H, does that refer to the hydrogen atom or the proton? You see? This is why it's a misnomer. We already met in the last page, we already talked about H plus and H. And you would be right in thinking that it was H as in hydrogen atom. But for some reason, we decided to drop the plus, and we call it pH. This H actually does not refer to hydrogen atom. It refers to H plus. And that sits in here. Now, because there's a lot of it, a lot of these protons, they had to come up with some way to quantify it. And sitting there going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 would take them all day. Yes? So what they came up with was this thing called a logarithmic scale. So what they did was they said, now the logarithmic scale works exponentially. It increases like that. That's how it goes. It starts slow and it goes up like that. So this is called a logarithmic scale. And they call it negative logarithmic to confuse you even further. So what that negative means, it flips everything upside down. So what it means is if there's a lot of protons, the number is smaller. If there is less of it, the number is higher. And the scale is between what and what? 1 to 14. Yeah? This means it's acidic. This means it's alkaline. Yeah? So protons, if there's a lot of it, it's acidic. So that's when you come up with pHs of 1, 2.5. Yeah? This is all in the acidic range. Then you come to our favorite, pH 9.5, which is at the other end, and even better, 11.5. Do those waters contain less protons or loads of protons? Less, exactly. So you got it. So basically, this is what we talk about when we talk about pH. pH means negative logarithmic concentration of protons. So if you understand this, then you understand the difference between acid and alkaline. So this covers alkalization. Now, what happens here now is when you go and do your demos, what color is it when it's acidic? What color is it when it's purple? Sorry, no, that's a stupid question. What color is it when it's pH 7? What color is it when it's 8.5? What is it 9.5? Excellent. So you've got a way of distinguishing each of those concentrations of pH. And it's very important because that's going to tell you how well that machine is doing at producing the pHs of the water that you have. And now you know why. So when you put purple in there, you say, oh, that doesn't have that many protons in it. When you see one which has got orange, you say, oh, it's got loads of protons in it. So now you know the difference. Yeah? So this is talking about protons. Right. The next thing we're going to talk about is antioxidation. Now, in order to understand what antioxidation is, we have to understand why is it called anti, and what is it that it's doing? What's so good about antioxidation? And in order to answer that question, we have to know what a free radical is. Does anybody know what a free radical is? And it's not ISIS. Right. Free radicals, can we get the periodic table back up? Right. Zoom out. Excellent. Right. So up there is the periodic table. Are you all familiar with the periodic table? Yeah, you all went to school? Excellent. Right. So what we have here is we have a table. And we have, on the far left, our friend hydrogen, which is in group 1, which is the first column. Now, if we move over to group 8, which is right at the other end, you have all of this column here. They're called noble gases. And if you go one more in, you have group 7, and the top one is fluorine. Yes? And below that is chlorine, and all the other enes, bromine, iodine, astatine, and can't spell the last one. Anyway, so these are all group 7. Now, the importance of group 7 elements is that they are the usual suspects when it comes to free radicals.